We've already discussed types of energy that come from the earth, like renewable and non-renewable. But now we want to think of what types of energy are fueling us. To think about the energies around us other than electricity, we're going to focus on these two types, kinetic energy and potential. And each one of those is going to have a calculation that we're going to be able to do. So you want to make sure you have your calculator handy. This video is going to start out with kinetic. So we want to make sure we know exactly what energy is. And we also want to make sure we know the examples and how to calculate each type of energy. And that's exactly what our essential questions here are at the top. So by the end of our discussion, we want to know all four types with examples and then calculate, again, the two main kinds, kinetic and potential. So again, make sure you've got that calculator ready to go so you can work on it as the video progresses. So let's start with our official definition here. What is energy? Energy is the ability to cause change. And when we think about this change, it could be in a substance or its surroundings. And so we're seeing change around us all the time, and that's because energy exists. So we say when something is able to change either its surroundings or itself, be writing these in as we go, either its surroundings or itself, it has energy. So energy is a pretty important part of our world because without energy, we would notice that nothing would ever change. So if energy didn't exist, we would see no change. So weather, landforms, people, places, all those things would never change if energy didn't exist. So let's dig in to these types of energies a little bit. Our first type of energy we're looking at here is called kinetic energy. And just by looking at the pictures, I want you to get a little prediction there in your head what kinetic energy might be. And what kinetic energy is it's energy due to motion. Energy due to motion. And so there's a space for you on the right hand side to add in some of your own examples. You can either draw them in or write them in. But anything moving is going to have kinetic energy. So here we can say this car driving has kinetic energy. Here we have a skateboarder. They have kinetic energy. Right? Here we have a person jogging. They have kinetic energy. We could say a ball rolling. We could say a bird flying. We could say a football being kicked. Right? Anything that has motion or moving has kinetic energy. So energy due to motion or to movement is kinetic. So pause that video, get at least two examples either written in or drawn in. So here's our formula for kinetic energy. We're going to be measuring the energy of an object in motion. And so to do that, we have this fancy formula of K for kinetic energy equals 1/2 times, there should be, we know in math when there's no symbol, we know that's a multiplication. So times m times v, and then we have a square right here. We can't lose track of that little square. And notice that square is only happening to the v. It's not happening to the whole formula, just to the v. So the K, of course, is kinetic energy, so the energy of something moving. And then here we have the m. If we think about what might we need to know about the object to measure its energy in motion, one thing we do need to know is how big the object is, and that would be the object's mass. So mass is one thing we need to measure when we measure kinetic energy, and we'll measure that mass in kgs or kilograms. The other thing we want to know if the object is in motion is its velocity, which is in sense measuring its speed of how fast it's moving. And like we said, that's getting squared, and we're measuring in that meters per second. Meters per second. So for our full calculation, we need to find mass of the object and velocity. And we take those two things and multiply them together with our half to get kinetic energy, or energy of the object in motion. And when we do that, when we measure in kinetic energy, or any energy for that matter, what we're looking at is the energy being measured in joules. So this is the unit that we're going to be using, joules, and we're going to represent that with a capital J throughout this process. So when you do the calculation and you end up with a value at the end for kinetic energy, it's going to be measured in joules, or capital J. So let's try some problems. You've got a word problem there. We're going to underline the key values. That always helps us get started. So looking through, we see a couple words and numbers that we want to highlight to plug into our formula. So we have a jogger with kinetic energy with a mass, that's one of our buzzwords, mass of 60 kilograms, and is moving forward at a speed or velocity of 3 meters per second. So knowing those two, we need to plug them in to our values down here. Want to plug those in. So we've got mass of 60 kilograms and velocity of 3 meters per second. Knowing those, we can plug them right into our KE formula. 1/2 times the mass times the velocity, and make sure that you square that velocity first, and then go back and times the mass and times the half, and you should get a value there. We'll check in together. One more practice problem here. This is about Wild Thing at Valley Fair. So again, we're reading carefully, looking for those key terms and values to pull out. Here we have a number of 10 meters per second, and here we have a number of 83 kilograms. So again, to plug that into our formula, 1/2 times the mass, we want to pull that out, times the velocity, and that's the one we want to square as we solve this problem. So plug in those values to the right spot, calculate it out, and record your total amount of energy. So before you move on to potential energy, check 3 things. 1, did you finish all the blanks on the left side? 2, did you complete examples of kinetic energy on the right, either drawn or written in? I asked you to have at least 2, so you can go above and beyond and more if you have them. And then did you complete both of the calculated word problems? You went all the way through and you have an answer and you have a unit recorded in for those answers. Check back, make sure you have that unit complete. If you do, you are done, and you can move on to the PE.